I read the ruling, and given how harsh is the word I would say the ruling was, it would seem there's a fairly high barrier for an appeal. I mean, what grounds could they appeal on? The court said Bitcoin futures and Bitcoin Cash are fundamentally similar products. You approve one, you have to approve the other. It seems unlikely that an appellate court would reverse that. But you're the lawyer here. What other arguments could they make if they wanted to appeal?
Yeah, well, it's tough to say. I didn't see in the ruling any obvious grounds on which on which the Supreme Court or the full D.C. Circuit could seize upon to overrule it. In addition to the resounding nature of the decision itself, it also helps the fact that the three-judge panel that heard it was a fairly diverse panel in terms of politics and background. So there isn't an obvious partisan slant or bias that someone could point to as potential grounds for appeal. It's always possible that the SEC could argue that the court didn't properly credit the SEC's discretion that they're entitled to exercise both under the statute and under relevant precedents that are still in effect governing the Administrative Procedures Act. But I agree with you that based on both the lineup of judges and the evidence presented by Grayscale and affirmed by the court, it looks like it would be a high bar.
Yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot, argue the other side here, but what grounds for appeal would there be? I mean, you're the lawyer. I know you're representing Grayscale here, but
I've been through the opinion many times. I have to say it was essentially the best possible opinion that we could have gotten. The court really leaned into the common sense and compelling legal arguments we've had, which is that futures and spot, for all regulatory purposes, for all ETF purposes, are essentially the same. So you have to treat them the same. I think it's a very clear argument to understand intuitively. We also gave quantitative analysis from Professor Bob Whaley, who is the inventor of the VIX index.
Yeah, I know.
He did a years-long study showing that futures and spot were 99.9% correlated, which is to say they are the same for ETF purposes.
I wonder if they're regretting the decision to approve Bitcoin futures, because that was the mistake, if you want to call it a mistake, that they made. I mean, once they committed to that, as the court pointed, they were essentially committed to the concept.
I would not call that a mistake at all. That is good for investors.
But
it's good for the Bitcoin
people
community.
At the SEC who think that this is a mistake.
I don't think so. I think they saw a reason why they were able to get comfortable with Bitcoin futures. They trade on the CME. They saw the surveillance that takes place there and feel that can account for things like fraud or manipulation. Our view is that that surveillance can also account for any concerns in the underlying spot Bitcoin markets. We got to an impasse with the SEC. It was a professional disagreement. We chose to, pursue this in litigation, which was not an easy decision to make. It's not something we take lightly just to our regulator, but it was something we felt we had to do on behalf of our investors.
Well, you moved the ball forward, and it turned out to be expensive.
Yeah, yesterday the court agreed with us. I will say, though, it's not technically back in the SEC's court today. Under the federal rules of appellate procedure, there is a 45-day window where they can appeal the decision. And so we just have to wait that out and respect that process.
Well, yeah, but so let me take the other side of this, Matt. If the SEC chooses not to appeal, what kind of time frame are we looking at to get these to the market? And there seems to be a consensus that if the SEC approves a Bitcoin ETF, they should approve all of them at once. Matt and Craig, maybe you can both agree on that. I mean, does everybody at least agree on that? And give us a time frame. Time that's assuming there's no appeal.
Yeah, I think lining up multiple products to launch at the same time would be the best possible outcome for investors. Create a competitive field. You would likely see the lowest prices and the best quality products. So I'm hopeful that that's the outcome we see, but of course we don't know that. In terms of the timeline, these 33 Act Bitcoin ETFs move on a very specific regulatory timeline with deadlines for review. The next deadline that is up is actually at the end of this week for the Bitwise application, but the SEC could delay that review for another 45 days. Ultimately, the calendar ends and a decision needs to be made sometime toward the end of the year or early next year. But we don't know what's going to happen, Bob. But that's the window you're looking at. Sometime in the next, let's say, 5 or 6 months, we should see significant progress.